men who go through to take the training that they've been given and use it for influencing the world in a Christ-like way. But as for how the training actually was, Harper, I don't have any control over the pictures. You do. There's like 14 pictures or so. I would have put them in order if I had time, but I didn't have time. So you can just kind of get a look. Harper can slide through them if he's got them on a roll. But the guy up here that you see, that was my senior drill sergeant, James. He was second in command, essentially, for my unit. So my unit was Unit 71, and they do 2 units every year. Mine was the largest unit since the largest one that Alert has had. So 54 guys. It was quite a large unit, lot to handle. That was my whole unit there before we started. I was doing in-processing on the last night before everything started. The picture right before it with all the cadre standing up there was right when it was beginning, and it meant as a very imposing feeling. The whole night is screaming and yelling and moving fast and just completely chaos. But it's there on purpose. It's there to disorient you. It's there to break you down. It's there to make you you lose yourself. In that gym, that night, you are taken away. And they take away your hair, they take away your clothes, they take away the way you talk, they take away the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you, not the way you think, but they'll change the way you think in a little bit. They take away almost every part of you that you consider yours. And they turn you into looking like every single other one of those 54 guys. And they use the fact that you are now brought down to the lowest position. You don't really have an identity. Your name is even changed. You're not called Benjamin, you're called Jacino. And you can't even, I couldn't even refer to myself as me, myself. I had to say recruit Jacino, this recruit, these recruits. Personal pronouns were not allowed. And the purpose in that was to teach you that you're not as important as you think you are. To help you learn how the focus shouldn't be on yourself, but it should be on others and what you're doing and the reason that you're doing it. So our night's the very first night. It's a Monday night. And then into that starts the first week. First week is a lot of learning, a lot of mistakes, a lot of grace too, but not a lot. So this would be one of our Saturday inspections. Saturday inspections took up the entire day. We started inspecting, preparing for inspection Saturday morning. We did an hour of PT and then started inspections. And we didn't finish preparing until mid-afternoon, and then the rest of the day was just being inspected. The barracks, your uniforms, your rooms, your jurisdictions, everything was inspected. At Alert, the inspection standard is perfection, and that's because the standard in the Bible, biblical standard, God is perfect. So the standard is perfection. But as humans, we are not perfect, and they understand that, and so they allow for grace, which is very small at Alert. The first Saturday that we were inspected, the passing standard is 24 gigs, and a gig is just like an infraction, one thing that was incorrect. If there was too much wrinklage on the front of my shirt here, that would be a gig. If this wasn't flat, that would be a gig. You're allowed 24 gigs for the whole entire unit, and to pass. Our first Saturday, our unit had over 7,000 gigs. And it took us 7 weeks before we could bring that down to a passing standard, which was a very stormy Monday afternoon, because the previous Saturday we had been doing a night nav med scenario that took too long, and so they had to push Saturday inspection back to Monday. But a lot of the training that you receive at Alert is very professional training, very highly skilled training. That's me going down the rappelling wall, 40-foot rappelling wall. On the right side, the silver stuff is a climbing wall that is actually a lot of fun. There was a lot of ropes course training, setting up rope systems, tearing down rope systems, learning how to use the functions of those rope systems that you learn in different scenarios that you weren't taught. That's what one thing I found about the training there was that a lot of the things that you were taught, you weren't taught to use those things you were trained in. You were given scenarios that you had to use critical thinking to use that concept that you were taught for a different actual purpose. And so the levels of critical thinking that you needed to be able to complete whatever event was necessary was actually very helpful for me in growing in a mental capacity and also in mental endurance, because you had time limits. Everything was on a time limit at Alert. As the weeks went along, the inspections became more and more, well, less and less lenient. You were allowed less infractions, you were given less time, and by week 6, I think, I was basically to my breaking point. I was fearing the next event that was coming up, which was a 24-hour endurance hike. And hiking at Alert is essentially rucking in the Army. They just call it hiking. And it's the 24-hour endurance hike with a 45-pound pack on your back, hiking for 24 hours. It's not a lot of fun, especially when you're in the mountains in Oklahoma and it's uphill, downhill. And so you can see some guys are running in this picture. If you gapped any more than an arm's distance from the guy in front of you, you had to run to catch up the distance. So it really was unfortunate if you were in the back of the line. You may have 55 feet and the guy in the front only had 1 to catch up. So every leg of the hike, every 50 minutes, the squads rotated and set a new squad towards the front, depending if there was 1 column or 2 columns. But the endurance hike was the point at which I had a mental breakthrough on being able to a change in perspective on what endurance looks like and what having the, I guess, mental grit to keep going through things looks like. I was dreading the alarm coming up, and it came. SDS we were all in the gym, formed up on stage, and he pulls out a bullhorn and he's like, can anyone tell me what 24 times 3 is? People told him it was, no, not 24, 8 times 3. And the answer was 24. As soon as the answer was given, he set off the alarm, and then we had to run all the way back to the barracks and prepare. And while we were getting ready, which means changing into the proper uniform, which as you can see, BDUs and t-shirts, we had to prepare our barracks up to the morning inspection standard, and we had to make sure all of our packs had everything in them, which at the time of the alarm, you don't have time to pack anything, so you'd have to have it packed beforehand. And afterwards, there would be a pack inspection. If you were missing anything, you were given a pack log to carry with you as a representation of the effort that you didn't put in to have everything there. So it was during the frenzy that goes on in that preparation, with alarms and sirens going everywhere and people yelling and shouting and lights strobing and machines outside kicking up dust, and it's just a very chaotic time. It was right then when it switched, and I changed from being afraid to being excited. And the whole rest of the time, yes, I was apprehensive for hiking 24 hours, and every hour it was like, I'd really rather not go another 50 minutes. And especially when it came to Ned there was a hill that was affectionately called Ned, the never-ending hill of doom, and it didn't really want to stop. Just kept on going up. But at the end, you have a very nice view, and you stop for lunch, and it's worth it. At the end of the 24-hour hike, it's worth it. And that is one out of many things. Alert will emphasize the fact that there is value in the struggle. There's value in putting through a lot of effort. There's value in going through times that are hard, because you're then able to speak into other people's lives who are going through a hard time. And you're then able to push yourself further, be able to go further. There's a verse that I really liked while I was there. It's 2 Timothy 1, verse 12. For the which cause I also suffer these things. Nevertheless, I am not ashamed. For I know who I have believed, and I am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I have committed unto him against that day. That verse was really helpful for me towards the end of basic training as things got harder, things got more rigorous. It was really hard to keep a good perspective because you didn't want to get smoked again. You didn't want to have all of the reasons why you could have passed but didn't because of the X and X and X caused you to not pass, and therefore this happened. And then it's just a chain event all the rest of the day that kind of puts you under the bus. But reading this in the morning, I would read it every morning during AM Watch for personal devotions. I am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I have committed unto him against that day. Anything that happened to basic training, I knew that whatever I had committed to God, he would be able to keep that for me. I would not lose that. He wouldn't let go of the things that I had committed to him. He wouldn't let go of his promises, and it would be worth it at the end. While we were there, we had to memorize the entire book of 1 Peter. And that book is mainly about suffering. It's about going through trials. It's about how it's worth it. Even though there are many hard things that happen, and we can go through some terribly difficult things, we have to hold on to God. We have to hold fast to the Lord. So, the symbolism that Alert brings into the training is very deep, very, very deep. Everything at Alert has a secondary or even tertiary meaning, or a symbol, down to the fact of why everyone looks the same, down to the fact of why you tuck your pants in your boots, why you are creasing your clothes, why you are making your bed the way you make it, 4 inches color, 10 inches from the top of the bed, why you make it so tight, why you, there's actually a saying, it's a call and response at Alert that says, this SDS will call out, beds are for, and then we will answer, making, sir. The whole reason Alert has beds is just to make them. But it's to teach a point, it's to teach attention to detail, it's to teach diligence with speed, it's to teach a focus to preparation ahead of time, thinking ahead, because beds take so long to make. On a Saturday inspection, I was a bed maker, and for the entire Saturday, all I did was make beds for the whole platoon. And it was discouraging when every single one failed. But on the day they did pass, it was really encouraging to see the journey that I had gone on from incompetence to competence. And that didn't happen without a struggle. It didn't happen without the pain. It didn't happen without the smokings running up and down the hill till you're dead, getting sprayed with a fire hose, you know. None of that would have been able to be effective unless the struggle had happened. So One thing that I found really neat about some of the rules, because there were a ton of rules. There was, oh, in fact, some of my cousins are like, they think the rules are excessive. But one thing they had was everywhere during our time there was always a place that was called cadre area, which the cadre is essentially the leadership of the unit. But the cadre area was a spot in the dorms. It was a spot outside the dorms. There was actually an entire barracks that was cadre barracks. There was an area in the dining hall, an area in the bus, which technically was outside the bus. But everywhere we went, there was a place that was cadre area. And at no time were you allowed to look in cadre area, or you were not allowed to go in cadre area. And frankly, it's as simple as saying this whole room is like we'll call it the dining hall. And the back 2 rows are cadre area. You have to exist in this room without ever looking there, without ever going there. And the cadre are all sitting in there watching you, and if you look in that direction, even if you look in the direction of it, you're not actually looking in there, you'll get dropped. And you will get repeatedly dropped until you stop looking. And the point and the purpose of it is to guard your eyes, to practice guarding your eyes from things that are very easy to look at, things that are very present in the room with you, things that are present in our lives wherever we go. There's always something you shouldn't be looking at. And the point is to teach you to guard your eyes from that and be able to train your mind to keep from looking where you're not supposed to look. That was I thought was really neat. I didn't expect that going in at all. And it was really neat to see just something that was as simple as not looking down the hallway and having to check if someone was in the hallway without looking down the hallway by using your peripheral vision. But how Alert brought such an important point into just daily life and taught it really well. Because I would say, first week, we were getting dropped like 5 or 6 times before breakfast for looking in cadre area. Even if we only looked once, we looked that direction, you got dropped for it. By the end, we were maybe getting dropped once a week for looking in cadre area. Getting dropped means the floor is considered the deck, and so you have to hit the deck, whatever you're doing, which would mean going down and doing push-ups or going down and doing flare kicks. So, if that helps. There was a lot of other symbolism that from, marching in a line, staying in your proper order, and putting your drawers together right, and working as a team. And everything was oriented to train you to think about things that are relevant in your life. And I thought that was really neat. And it did help. It did help a lot. The biggest thing that I brought home from Alert was a change in perspective on almost every area of my life. And it doesn't sound like that's a huge thing. It's not like, all of a sudden I'm a completely different person because of this one thing that I learned or one skill that I got. But a change of perspective, if it's properly applied, can affect every area of your life. And the way that I've seen it doing that, in maybe ways that are subtle that other people don't understand or other people don't see, it's impacted me more than I think any other experience in my life has impacted me. And I'm really grateful for that. One example that I would give of that change in perspective was, I don't even know if anybody else in the entire unit had the same realization that I did, but for me it was impactful. Our chaplain was giving a message about kind of recapping how basic training had gone, how we had grown, what we had learned. And he had everyone raise their hand. He said, is anyone more physically fit? Is anyone stronger? Does anyone feel like they've come from point A to point B physically during basic training? Pretty much everybody raised their hand. And then he goes, well, what did you do every morning? He said, you did an hour of PT. Throughout the day, you're getting drops, doing push-ups and flutter kicks and all sorts of stuff throughout the day. And you were regularly working out, especially with regular hour every morning before the sun came up. You were doing PT. And then he asked if everyone had grown spiritually, and everybody raised their hand, because the spiritual saturation of Alert is, I would say, profound. I have not seen it better done. Everyone raised their hand that they had grown spiritually, and then he asked what they had been doing every morning at Alert. And the answer is reading your Bible, memorizing scripture for 10 minutes every morning, praying, writing in your journal. And what hit me was the connection between working out and reading your Bible. I had understood that you read the Bible, you grow in the Lord, and that's something that you should do, and it's very important. But the connection between training your body, working out regularly, everyone knows if you work out regularly, you have to work out regularly in order to grow, in order to become stronger. And if you, I believe it's 3 days, if you don't work out for 3 days, your muscles will plateau and then start to go backwards if you don't continue exercising them. So even just that short amount of time, you will stop growing and you can start to go backwards. Making the connection between working out and reading your Bible, it's like even a few days of not reading the Word, not praying, not spending time meditating in it, journaling your thoughts, memorizing the Bible, just a short amount of time can cause you to stop growing and even go backwards. And that regular time, we had 30 minutes every day. Throughout the day, we were memorizing. We were constantly being given messages called wisdom searches and being saturated in it throughout the day, but with a very specific intended focus each morning on personal devotions. That's what caused everyone to grow. And so the new outlook on personal devotions really impacted me more than I thought it would. And I really, really appreciated our chaplain, Chaplain Birch. He's a great guy. But his point there really drove home how important it is to be in the Word, and that it's not something to take for granted, and it's also not something that you can get by with just Sunday morning. It's not something you can buy with Sunday morning and Sunday evening and Wednesday. It's not something that you can get by with just like once or twice. It's got to be more often than not. Otherwise, you're not going to grow. You may even get worse. So, I would highly recommend Alert to any single young man who wants to grow in their walk with the Lord, but they got to realize that any small bit of pride you have will stand out like a sore thumb. It stands out like a sore thumb a lot if you don't, and it will get nailed down if you don't nail it down first. So the teamwork is extremely important. Humility is extremely important. Effort. The three words that basic training kind of runs by is speed, intensity, and volume. And if you do not exhibit all three of those characters to the extent that they can be exhibited, you will not succeed in basic training. Everywhere you go outside, you run. You never walk outside unless you're marching. You can't run inside unless you're on a time limit, but you're 80% of the time on a time limit, and then you're required to run, so you're running a lot. Intensity is basically how you combine speed with focus. I struggled with that at the beginning because there was a lot of, I'm trying to dress down a collar and tuck the sheet in just the right spot so the lips aren't showing, and I couldn't figure out how to do that faster. I couldn't figure out how to do that with more speed and more intensity and volume. And it's the intensity part that comes in and causes you to not speed up, but focus more. There's a phrase that I learned is, I can remember what my squad leader would regularly say it to us. He would say, you've probably heard it before, it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And when you're making a bed, that's very important. When you are trying to tie knots, that's very important. When you're crossing the river and you're hooking up medical baskets with people inside with real live hypothermia, it's very important because slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and you can't rush things. When you are doing something of great importance, it has to be done right. Another call and response alert was do it right or do it again. And we did a lot of things again. We did a lot of things again. But by the end, we were doing them right. And that's the whole point, is to learn how to do it right the first time. So, Advancement Day, that was a picture of Advancement Day, the last day that we were there. In the morning, we did our own stuff, kind of wrapping things up in the barracks, and then the afternoon we did skills demonstrations of rappelling and some rope systems and alternate river crossing systems and 9-to-1 mechanical systems. And then I got to do the obstacle course demonstration, which was a lot of fun. After that, we did some marching on the parade field, and then went inside for the ceremony, and walked off the stage as different men, and then walked on at the start. And I think everyone could tell that it was different. All of us could tell that we were different. The people watching could tell that we were different. But it wasn't different. It didn't feel different. It didn't feel different when I was there. It didn't feel like anything had changed. But I realized that it's because it was a static environment. Everyone was changing with me. And so I didn't feel like I was changing as much. It was when you come home that you can really notice the change, because everyone stayed as they were, but you changed. And so when you come home and you notice things are different, and you look back at your old life, the way you ran your life, and how you want to run things differently, it kind of brings back to the vision of forging extraordinary men to influence their world for Christ. Now that you have changed, you go back and you influence your world, and you make the difference, you make the changes that you need to make because of the way that you have a new perspective. I had a thought and it slipped my mind just a second ago. I can't remember. But does anyone have any questions that they were curious about?
Is it affiliated with any particular branch of the service?
It is not. It is strictly their own private thing, but they have worked with the military alongside them. At times, the national governments and state governments often call upon them. They're very well known and very well recognized for things that they do. I think it was summertime, they sent a deployment to Ukraine to do work out there. They were there for 9/11 and for the Challenger disaster and a lot of stuff like that.
So a lot of the recruits when they graduate get involved in, you were telling me some of the things they get involved in, like search and rescues, EMT kind of thing.
Yes. So recruits would advance into the battalion, which is where I'm at now, and there's a second phase and a third phase afterwards that you could go through before your official alert graduation. It's all optional. Alert's optional itself. You don't have to go. But phase one is essentially laying the ground foundation. Phase 2 levels that out. Takes the new man that they broke up and started to reform, and the phase 2 kind of puts all those pieces back together and kind of settles you down. Phase 3 would be the one that you actually start building something onto. Phase 3 would be choosing to go through fire academy or aviation to get your pilot's license, or EMT, or dive training, or they even have construction, they have missions, leadership and communications, a bunch of different individual phases that you could choose to do multiple ones of, but it would obviously take a long time because each one's a quarter, 12 weeks or so. Those are more meant to launch you towards a career.
Did I understand that you paid to go to this course?
Yes,
Everybody that was there paid?
everyone was there that paid to do it. Yep. Yep, that's right. My cousins asked me why I paid to do something like that. And the reasons I gave, it's worth it. It's very much worth it. I'm not sure yet. I would very much love to go back for the second phase. But I previously, before I went, I made the decision to not go unless God made the doors very clearly opened. I didn't want to plan on going back because I didn't know what the future held. And so I will be seeking God's wisdom on whether the doors are open or whether they're not. I think that the benefit of going back would be really great because the purpose of the second phase is to build on the first phase. And so the second phase is more focused on personal, basically, the first phase, basic training, breaks you down, and sets you up, but it doesn't train you as the new man. Second phase takes the new man and it actually makes you put your new self into practice. You are required to manage your own time. You are required to run your own schedule, make your own plans, and there's consequences if you don't. And so it's more of a focus on building your own self in the new mindset that you have. So I'd love to go back, but only if God clearly opens the doors for me to do so.
Just for single men?
It is. Up until an officer. Once you're an officer higher than a first sergeant, then you can be married. But it's for single men. So you can be. There are some guys who go through engaged. So you're still single. Yes. No. 2 per year, a spring unit and a fall unit. My unit was the 71st unit to go through. Next one is unit 72. But yes, Alert has so far sent, they've graduated 2,831 men out of basic training. So it's pretty neat.
Were some of the instructors like former military?
Yes. Well, here,
There's so much, it sounds so much like my son when he went through boot camp. I just wondered if a lot of the,
when Alert was founded 30 years ago, every single one of the guys that was there creating the program were ex-military. And they knew how the military worked, and they knew why the military did what they do because it's effective. And so they used those principles, but they focused it on God. And so it's very similar, but there's a little differences. So the cadences are all the same cadences from the military, but the words are sometimes changed just a little bit. To think, the one that's I left my home to join the Army, and some of it, I left my home to join Alert Academy, And a lot of the focuses, some of them are still funny, but there's ones that are really, really good, strong to serve and stuff like that.
the discipline to serve in the military and discipline to serve the Lord.
That's right.
Bring that up.
That's right. Very true. The motto of Alert is strong to serve. That's why they train the men, to be strong to serve. That kind of gives an overview, I think. I'll turn it back over to Pastor.
Great, I mean, I'm sure he could go on and on and on and on.
I could. Ask
But,
Joe.
Yeah. But I hope that you'll.
I mention it every day.
I hope that you'll, ask questions and get more information. It's, obviously the Lord's doing something in his heart, and I hope that rubs off on us too. We can become complacent, and I was just impressed with the little bit that I'd heard of the program. I grew up with something very similar where it was called the Christian Black Belt Association, where it was Kenpo karate, but they took out all the Oriental yin yang and they put all Christian principles in, and it was phenomenal. It's what I needed when I was growing up as a young man, and so these things can mark you, and that mind, my mind controls what my body does, and that's a biblical principle that is universal. So anyway, I hope we'll have more opportunities to learn some more, and I'm grateful for Benjamin going and committing and finishing. Was there any attrition? Yeah.
Yes, there was one guy,
Okay.
which is actually pretty low. Usually there's a few more. It's pretty tough, but there was one guy, it was more than just the toughness of basic training. He was struggling with more in his life than just basic. He thought leaving would get him out of it, but it wouldn't, so. Otherwise, it was a pretty successful unit. All 54 of the 55 guys made it, so
Phenomenal.
it was great. Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you guys for
Appreciate
praying too. I appreciate that. It meant a lot.
it. Absolutely.
I needed it, for sure.
And I hope that there'll be a lot more conversations from what you heard tonight, and, you can share some of the things that God taught you, and be able to be a positive influence. That's great.